It's time for the 2018 Horizon Cup at the Thompson Park Disc Golf Course in Jamesburg, New Jersey. Who will have what it takes to take the cup home this year? Stay tuned as Disc Golf Monthly starts now. It's a beautiful day at the Thompson Park Disc Golf Course. We're here to cover the second round coverage for the men's Pro Open division at this year's 2018 Horizon Cup. This course is set in a beautiful setting on the border of Monroe and Jamesburg Township in New Jersey. This course features rolling hills with semi-tight fairways spread out throughout the park. The park was designed by David Wolverton and Adam Harris in 2015 and has become quite a gem on the Central Jersey disc golf circuit. We're getting ready to start round two. Let's take a look at who we'll be seeing on the lead card. In first place, shooting a 50, we have Chris Villa from Norristown, PA. Two strokes behind shooting a 52, we have Dylan Horst from Westchester, PA. Tied with Dylan for second place, we have John Brubago from Southgate, Kentucky. And in fourth place, we have Lou Garcia from Keansburg, New Jersey, shooting a 53. Well, it looks like we are in for an exciting challenge between Chris Villa and Dylan Horst. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we'll be here for the start of round two. Don't go away, we'll be right back. And we're back for the start of round two at the 2018 Horizon Cup. Here we have Chris Villa in first place with a 50, Dylan Horst and John behind with a 52. We have Lou Garcia in fourth place shooting a 53. We're starting off on basket one. This is a par 3, 444 feet. Here Chris has with his drive. Chris Villa gets a really nice drive. Just faded back a little too soon, but that should putt. He should get his birdie from there. Here's Dylan. And Dylan gets a nice turn on this. Let's see if it fades back to the basket. He gets a nice kick off that tree, puts him right to the basket. He should have a good look at it too from there as well. Here's John with his first drive. John doesn't get as much turn on it. It's fading out on him. That goes left of the basket on him. He's going to have a tough look at a birdie from where he is. Looks like he ended up in that some vegetation, that pine tree. Here's Lou with his drive. Coming in nice and low. It's turning nicely. It's just gliding right to the basket. Comes up a little short, but he should be able to get his birdie from there as well. John has a long look for a birdie from here. And he makes a run at it. He just comes up short. But he'll get his par from there. There's Lou shooting for birdie. And he makes it. And now we have Chris Villa with that excellent drive. And he just lobs it right in there. Now we're going to round out the group. Let's see if Dylan can get his birdie as well. He's practically a drop in from here. He just has to reach out and put that in. And he makes it. So everybody gets their first birdie of the round with the exception of John. John's now tied with Lou for third place. As we move on to basket 2, this is a par 4, 546 feet. This basket starts out at an uphill elevation up a hill, as you can see. And it's a very wide opening beyond that, very wide fairway. Chris's drive gets out there, clears the hill. And Dylan throws a really fast drive. Gets caught up in some vegetation that slows it down. It gets that very high in the air. He should be in the middle of the fairway. Here's John with his drive. John ends up behind that tree. He plays out very nicely.
Yeah, good
He's really far down that fairway. There's Lou with a very open shot. He keeps it low. He avoids that one tree.
There we go.
Let's see if that skips towards the basket for him. He may have a look at a putt from there. May not have given him enough fade to get to the basket, but we'll see. Here's Chris with his second shot. It just hydras right into where the basket is. Dylan with the furthest drive in the group on his second shot. And he just hydras that in. See if that skips for him to the basket. Looks like it's going to be really close to the basket for him. And he just comes up a little low with that birdie putt. There's Chris shooting for birdie. And that just does not stay in. It just bounced off the chains and kicked off the rim and went out. Here's John. It's just outside the circle. And that chain's out for him. So Dylan's going to pick up a stroke on Chris with that birdie putt. He's now one stroke away from Chris, shooting at 57. Chris is at a 56. Lou and John are still tied. We're moving on to basket 3. This is a par 4, 579 feet. It starts out as a straight shot. As you get down the fairway takes a dogleg right. There's some OB pretty far down the fairway to be aware as a roadway. Chris is going with a turnover shot. That turns over nicely for him. We'll see if I got out of that grouping of trees to give him a look towards, get an upshot to the basket. Here's Lou with his drive. And that kicks off a tree. And John's going to go with a sidearm here. It's a lot of turn on that. He clears those trees and it skips. So he's going to have a clean shot out in the open to lay up to the basket, possibly get his 3. There's Lou with his second shot. We got that a little too high in the air. That got him some good distance in spite of that. John turns that over. And he's looking pretty close to where that basket is. We may have a look at a putt from there for a birdie. Here's Chris with his next shot. He's right behind that tree, as you can see. And he clears everything. He's right to the basket. He should have an easy 3 from there. And Dylan, again, out driving everybody else in the group. He goes with a sidearm. And that should also put him really close. A really good look at a birdie from there. Here's Lou. He's going to have a long run for a birdie here. Goes with the jump putt. Just fades a little too soon in front of the basket. And John's making his birdie attempt. And he just gets that up in the air. John gets his first birdie of the round. And he's going to have a one-stroke lead over Lou with that birdie putt. See everybody else putting out. So Chris and Dylan are still one stroke apart. John takes the one-stroke lead over Lou. If we move on to basket 4, this is a par 3, 249 feet. This is one of the shortest holes on the course today. This is also one of the trickiest holes to play. It's definitely the most wooded holes on the course. Dylan tries to go with a high-ister shot. Just kicks off some vegetation as he gets toward the basket. Here's Chris's drive. Chris gets a lot of turn on that. He just makes it right through, and you see the basket. It just skips away, though. We'll see how far that took away from the basket. There's John with his drive. And he kicks off a tree at the end. That looks really nice for Lou. And John goes to the jump putt. More than likely just trying to get a placement shot there to make sure he got right close to the basket as possible. Here's Dylan going for a birdie. And he can't quite make it. It goes too far wide right. Chris's disc skipped too far away from the basket. He's got to play back to get his birdie on this shot. And he just lobs it out there and it just comes down too early. And now Dylan's shooting for par. And he makes it. And Lou has a very easy birdie. He gets the only birdie in the group, and he ties it up with John for third place. As we move on to basket 5, this is a par 3, 270 feet. This is looking to get a relatively straight shot, where as you get towards the basket down that incline, you're looking to fade right, or turn over and go to the right. If you're throwing a backhand, if you're throwing a sidearm, you want it to curl left or to the right at the end. Dylan and going with the sidearm here. Looks like that turned nicely right to the basket for him. Chris is going with the backhand. And that just turns too early and hits that tree. So he's going to have a tough look at it, getting it too. It's going to be really important for him with that great drive that Dylan had. Here's John with his drive. He kicks off some vegetation, but it still gets him really far down the fairway, really close to that basket. It's going to put a lot of pressure on Chris. And it looks like that was getting really close. We'll have to see where Dylan is. Dylan could possibly tie this up, depending upon where his drive landed. Here's John with his birdie attempt. And that's birdie number 2 for John. John's going to take a one-stroke lead over Lou again. Lou makes the birdie. John gets his second. Sorry, Lou gets the par. John gets the second birdie of the round for him. There's Chris going for par. There you see that disc lane just below the graphic. That's Dylan's disc. He's going to have an easy putt for a 2, and he's going to tie this up. at 65. And that brings us to a tie for first place between Dylan and Chris with a 65 each. John has a one-stroke lead over Lou again. As we move on to basket 6, this is a par 4, 522 feet. This is a very roller-friendly shot. Dylan goes with an air shot. He turns that over nicely. You're just looking to get it through all that vegetation you see in front of you. The fairway opens up after that, and you're looking to head off to the right. The basket is close to some bushes, and there's some heavy vegetation throughout this fairway leading right to the basket that you do want to avoid. Here's Lou with his drive. Goes with a very high air shot. And he catches up with some of that vegetation hanging off from them trees. Chris threaded that perfectly through that gap. Looks like that's going to be the longest drive in the group. John's going with the sidearm. Expect more of a roller shot here. He went with a forearm roller, and that rolled him right into that vegetation. And Dylan makes a shot for birdie. She really needed that. Chris had an easy putt for birdie as well. And so with that putt, Dylan keeps this tied at 68. Now moving on to basket 7. This is a par 4, 525 feet. This is another very roller-friendly hole. Fairway goes up a semi-steep incline. You see some trees just spaced out here and there. Dylan goes with a sidearm shot.
Fucking UFO coming out of his hand.
Here's Lou with his drive. As they make it over this incline, the fairway opens up. There's some pine trees. It's a pine tree and a somewhat tree with low-hanging branches that are protecting the basket. Chris goes with a very low shot, very straight. He clears that. He's on the other side of that hill. Here's John with his drive. Looks like John was trying to go with an air roller, a sky roller there. Looks like that just got caught up. And John gets lucky. His disc was getting carried away from the basket, but it got caught up in them branches of that pine tree. Here's Lou with his approach shot. He's getting a lot of turn on that. It's starting to fade back nicely, though. And I'll put him really close to the basket for a birdie putt. Chris also. He lays up really nicely. Dylan going with trying to turn over a sidearm shot here. And he does that very nicely. It kicks out and rolls away a little bit, but that should putt from there. And he makes his birdie putt. Looks like everyone's going to get a birdie here. And that's Lou's fourth birdie of the round.
Try to take that thing away from me right
What a man, he tries to take my hot tub and my missus doing cannonball. Couldn't live without it. Cannonball in the hot tub.
And right now, Dylan is leading the group with 6 birdies, with Chris behind with 4 birdies, and they're tied for first still. As we move on to basket 8, this is a par 4, 549 feet. There's Dylan's drive. He's going with a sidearm shot. That turns over very nicely for him. He got that really high, dangerously close to the branches hanging. Looks like he got brought down a little early, but he got really good distance on that drive. There's Lou. He's going the backhand shot off the tee. He gets dangerously close to that first tree, but he makes it past all that, and he doesn't hit a thing. Here's Chris Villa with his drive. He turns that over. That goes nice and straight for him.
There you go. Good job.
It skips right towards the basket. Here's John with his drive. So John's the furthest out. Here's the second shot. He's backed right up to that tree. And he misses all those trees. He gets a nice approach shot. Here's Lou Garcia with it. Going with a sidearm shot. He gets way high near a little spike hyzer angle there. So put him really close to the basket. Just Dylan with his second shot. Going with the sidearm again. Gets that really high in the air. Nice spike hyzer angle with that as well.
Nice shot, Bill.
Should put him really close to the basket. Here's Chris. Goes with a turnover shot with his backhand. That's going to fade right to the basket. It's a great shot. John's third shot. Here's Chris going for birdie. This will be his 5th birdie of the round. And he just pours that right in. Here's Lou also going for birdie. This will be his 5th of the round. And now we're going to have Dylan. He needs to make this putt to keep the tie with Chris. This will be his 7th birdie of the round. And he makes it. So we still have a tie for first place with Dylan and Chris. Lou pulls away a little bit. He has a 2-stroke lead over John now with that birdie. We're moving on to basket 9. This is a par 3, 288 feet. Dylan's setting up to throw a backhand here. And he's getting that to turn over. Looks like he wanted that turnover a little more than that, but it just faded out a little early at the end. It stalled out at some point and it faded left on him. Here's Lou going with the sidearm shot. That's going to skip in right nicely towards the basket.
Good shot, Lou.
It's right there. There's Chris going with the backhand. He plays to the right and kicks off that tree. Here's John with his drive. So Dylan's next shot could be a really great opportunity for him to take the lead here. We see Chris with his second shot. So the best he'll manage here is to get par. It's be an opportunity for Dylan to try to take the lead away if he can get a birdie putt. Here's John with his second shot. It fades away just in front of the basket. Looks like Dylan's got quite a challenge here. He's pretty sizable distance from the basket. He just clanks off the change. Doesn't get enough pressure on the change to stay in. Lou gets a birdie. That is Lou's 6th birdie of the round. He'll be taking a 3-stroke lead over John, assuming John makes his putt. And John does. At this point, Lou's really pulling away from John. He's starting to make a run here at lead, getting a 3-way tie for first. He's 2 strokes away from Dylan and Chris with that birdie. As we move on to the back 9 here with basket 10, this is a par 3, 243 feet. There's Lou going with a sidearm shot off the tee. Keeps that low. See if it gets some nice skip to the basket. Takes him across the basket. Looks like he's got really good shape to get a birdie from there. There's Dylan also going to the sidearm shot off the tee. Goes with a very tall spike hyzer shot. Looks like something caught his disc and took it down a little early. Here's Chris with his drive. Goes straight down the middle. He's looking for that to hyzer back, and it does.
Come on.
Let's see how he might have kicked off something. We'll see where that leaves him. There's John with his drive. Dylan has to play back to the basket. Doesn't quite get enough distance. And he makes that putt. That was a fantastic putt. So Chris has the answer to that and make this putt to keep tied with Dylan. He lobs that out there, and it just goes in. There's Lou also going for birdie. And he just clears the basket as well. Here's John. This group's going to have a star frame if he can make this. And it just clanks off the rim. So Dylan and Chris still tied for first. And Lou's still 2 strokes behind. We're moving on to basket 11. This is a par 5, 840 feet. And Lou has the box. So in that last hole, Dylan got his 8th birdie of the round. Lou got his 7th birdie of the round, and Chris recorded his 6th birdie of the round. Dylan gets that low. Looks like that might have left his hand a little too soon. He goes into that rough off the edge of the fairway. That's where you don't want your disc to be. You were looking to play down the hill. There's a creek bed at the bottom of this hill. That is OB. And Chris just gets that out there nicely. He's going to clear that gap. He may make it right to the edge of that creek. That looked like it had a good distance on it. There's John with his drive. And John keeps that nice and straight. It's right down to where that creek bed is. So Dylan has to play out of the rough from here. He's going to look to turn over a sidearm shot. Let's see if we hear anything. Looks like he cleared out. Who's going to try and get out of the rough with a forearm roller here? And that gets out there. Let's see if it keeps going. Looks like it just kicked off that one tree, but it kept going forward. So he's at the edge of the creek from the looks of things. And John looks like he's going to go with a forearm roller as well. There's Lou making his approach shot. The basket's just up the hill. It's right at the edge of a roadway, which the roadway is OB. They have to be careful not to overshoot the basket too much, or they could go OB.
sir.
And Lou makes a fantastic putt. He makes his 8th birdie of the round with that putt. Now he has a 5-stroke lead over John. John going for his birdie putt. He just goes to the right of the basket. Dylan shooting for birdie. And he makes it, recording his 9th birdie of the round.
That's the second shot.
John's playing back to get par, and he makes it. So Chris also shoots a birdie to get his 7th of the round. Dylan and Chris are still tied. As we move on to basket 12, this is a par 3, 279 feet. Just Lou with his drive. He goes with a very wide, sweeping hyzer shot. Dylan is playing in the opposite direction with a sidearm shot.
Stop. Stop. Yeah, one time. Oh.
Wow, it looked like Chris may have had an ace run there. There's John with his drive. And Lou makes the putt, recording his 9th birdie of the round. Dylan. Dylan had a challenging putt, being right up against that tree. He makes his 10th birdie of the round. Chris with a very short putt. He makes his 8th birdie of the round. So Dylan and Chris are still tied with an 85 apiece. Lou now has a 6-stroke lead over John. As we move on to basket 13, this is a par 4, 504 feet to the basket. So at this point, Chris and Dylan have been tied for 8 holes. And this is the 9th hole since they're playing since they've been tied up. Dylan gets out a little too high, gets cut down from some of that hanging branches. Chris keeps that low enough to miss all them branches, and he's going to get maximum distance off that. John with that very pronounced reach back and with his drive, but he gets struck down early. He's going to go with a sky roller here. Looks like that got him down pretty close. There's Dylan going with a sidearm shot. Looks like that got them pretty far down, close to the basket. There's Lou with his 2nd shot. And Lou threads that perfectly. It's going to skip right to the basket. Okay, Chris also comes in very well with a that approach shot. John gets caught up in that rough. He's trying to play out of it. Looks like he did a good job avoiding all that vegetation. It looks like he cleared through it. Here's Dylan shooting for birdie. This will be his 11th birdie of the round. And he makes it. So Dylan and Chris are still tied with an 88 apiece. Lou now has a 7-stroke lead over John. We're moving on to basket 14. This is a par 4, 458 feet. So this is a 9-hole tie between Chris and Dylan. Chris with his drive. He just clears it right through that gap between those two trees.
Hey, neighbor.
Dylan's going with a sidearm shot for his approach to the basket. He's going to get that nice and high, drop in with that spike angle. Chris had some trees to contend with his approach shot. Looks like that'll put him about the same spot where Dylan is. John's third shot. There's Lou going for birdie. Oh, it just clanks off the rim. He's shooting. Chris shoots for birdie and makes it. And from about the same distance, here's Dylan. So now we have a 10-basket tie between Chris and Dylan. As John putts out. Dylan has recorded his 12th birdie of the round. Chris has recorded his 10th. Let's see if this tie can go 11 baskets as we move on to basket 15. This is a par 4, 522 feet. Dylan goes with a backhand shot. He keeps that nice and low. And he throws it right through all them trees. There's Chris's drive. He keeps that nice and low as well. Looks like that got him down there pretty far. And Lou just kicks off a tree. Less than halfway down the fairway. Here's John with his drive. John gets a lot of turn off that. That's great. He's going to skip right back towards the basket. That may be the longest drive in the group. We're out to see. Here's Lou with his second shot. Chris's second shot. Looks like that got really close to the basket. That's rolling away, so we'll see if he can make the putt from there. Here's Dylan with his second shot. He's going with a sidearm shot. Looks like he's going to have a tough approach. He just gets right through those two trees you see up ahead. It's really high in the air. Looks like that may have gone too deep. We'll have to see how far that went. Here's Lou with his third shot. And John did get the furthest drive in the group. This is an approach shot. Puts him really close to the basket. Dylan has to play the basket to get his birdie putt. And it just kicks off the top of the basket. Chris can capitalize on this. He's somewhat close, but he's got quite a challenge here. He could take the lead with this putt. And with that straddle-like putt, he puts that right in to take the lead. So the tie is broken. Chris getting his 11th birdie of the round. So now Chris has a one-stroke lead over Dylan with a 94. Dylan has a 95. As we move on to basket 16, this is a par 3, 246 feet. This is a straight shot. You just have to keep it up the middle and stay the straightest shot as you can. And there you see the basket between those two bushes up ahead. Chris, there's a nice straight shot going right at it. Might go in. Looks like if that had more distance, that may have went right in the basket. He might have had an ace. But that definitely looks like he's going to be able to get a birdie from there. At this point, it's going to be tough for Dylan to come back. At this point, if Chris can continue to make these birdies, and the remaining holes on the course here are very short, so it's going to come down to who can get the birdies. Here's Dylan. He's going with a sidearm shot. That turns too far.
Yeah, Dale.
There you go.
But he'll be really close. He'll also have a really good look at a birdie from there as well.
Get through.
Okay, so Chris and Dylan both get birdies. Chris maintains that one-stroke lead. As we move on to basket 17, this is a par 3, 260 feet. Chris still has the box. This is an uphill shot, as you can see. There's a roadway that you have to be careful to avoid up ahead. Here's John with his drive.
I guess. Might be a good
And Dylan once again going with the sidearm. Gets him right in the birdie range.
That's a nasty felon.
There's John shooting for birdie. And that just clanks off the rim. Here's Dylan. Just went a little beyond the basket. He has a slightly downhill putt to contend with here. And it just changed out to the right, and it's rolling away on him. And he gets an unfortunate roll away. Now he's going with his shooting for par. So this will be an opportunity for Chris to get a 2-stroke lead with this putt. And he pours that right in for his 13th putt, birdie of the round. He's also shooting for birdie. And he makes it for his 11th birdie of the round. So going in the last hole, Chris has a 2-stroke lead over Dylan. As we're going to finish up here on basket 18, this is a par 3, 260 feet. This is an alternate tee position that they're driving from. Chris still has the box. At this point, Chris can play relatively conservative here.
Let's go.
He goes right at it. That's going to skip right to the basket. He should have an excellent look at a birdie, too, from where that disc ended up. Here's Lou with his drive. And that just gets a little too tall, kicks off that tree and rolls away on him. There's John with his drive. John also gets out a little high, kicks off some trees. There's Dylan with his drive. At this point, Dylan has to hope that Chris makes some kind of mistake here where he can capitalize on it with a birdie, possibly tie it up. It's going to go a little deep, though, with that drive. Looks like that did hit off a vehicle. We'll have to see if that stayed in bounds. He tries to go with a turnover shot to approach the basket, but it just fades out on him and goes left. Dylan just lays right up to the basket. Lou gets an unfortunate kick out of the basket and it rolled away on him. And he still doesn't make it. Here's John putting for his birdie. And he makes it. John will finish up with a 112. Here's Chris with his 14th birdie of the round in the win. And he wins 4-stroke lead over Dylan. And that'll do it as Chris finishes with a 4-stroke lead over Dylan at the 2018 Horizon Cup. We're going to take a quick break. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Well, that was one exciting tournament as Chris and Dylan were at a tie for first place for 10 holes on the second round. Chris started around with a 2-stroke lead, but by hole 5, Dylan managed to catch up to him and tie for his first place up until hole 15, where Chris managed to finish with a birdie and Dylan's second shot went too far past the basket to be able to finish with a birdie. When Chris took the lead to himself, he finished strong, recording birdies on the remaining holes for the win. Well, that's all the time we have for this month's show. Join us next month for another edition of Disc Golf Monthly, the show that takes you one step closer to the sport of disc golf.